Ending employment. So, despite all of this training, all the supporting of your staff, if things are still not working out, you might have to end their employment. And some reasons that you might need to end their employment are for things like serious misconduct, which could be things like stealing, fraud, violence, serious breach of health and safety. All of those sorts of things can be considered serious, and there might be another reason might be that they've just not been performing up to the standard that you need. Or you might have to end someone's employment because you've had your NDIS funding cut, or you've got different priorities, and you need to change the staff that you've got. And there's a whole lot of rules around how you end employment, because you don't want to end up in court for unlawful dismissal. So you need to be aware of those rules and get help and advice if you find yourself in that situation. So some of the things that you need to think about when you need to end employment is making sure that the worker does know what's expected of them, and all of those things that Jackie's just talked about. Hopefully you will never end up in this situation. But making sure that you're giving feedback all the time and they know what's expected and there are no surprises. When you have the conversation with the person that you're ending their employment, it should not be a surprise to anyone. And making sure that the people that are doing the ending of employment, and that might be you, or in my case, I had to end someone's employment, the microboard, and I had a couple of people who were very experienced HR managers helping me to do that, and we did looked at all of the Fair Work Australia rules and made sure that we knew what we needed to do to act lawfully and avoid getting in court for unlawful dismissal. So this is a case where a support worker had been allegedly being abusive and verbally and physically abusive towards a person they were supporting, and the abuse had been witnessed by other staff members, and this person their employment was ended. However, the person that had their employment ended took them to court for unlawful dismissal, and this person won because they couldn't substantiate the evidence. So keeping good records and having good evidence as to why you've ended the employment of the person is really, really important, and I'll talk a little bit about what that might look like. Giving warnings. You don't have to give warnings, but it is a good practice to do that. Like I said, no surprises. It needs to be the last resort is firing someone. So written warnings give you protect you. So having a letter that's outlining, what's expected of them and how they haven't been meeting those expectations, and some facts. So when I had to fire the person that I was working with my son, he was turning up to work late consistently, week after week, day after day, week after week. Would take 1 day off every 10 days, sick, and used up all his leave, and then he was wanting to take leave without pay. He was also not supervising Isaac and not engaging with him. and would watch TV. I'd come home and find him watching TV, and Isaac would be out in the backyard, not being supervised. And so things that I did was I dug out all of the leave reports. I use an accounting and payroll system called Xero, and it was very easy to just print out a load of reports on the amount of leave and the timesheets and things. And when I'd come home and he'd been watching TV, I'd written that down in the shift report so that I had some evidence that when I came home on this day, I found you doing this. So giving the employer a warning about, what they're doing wrong, and that the consequences might be that, they could be fired, they could lose their employment is really important. On the Fair Work Australia website, there's some templates that you can use for warning letters. You don't have to give warnings, but like I said, it's a good idea too. And giving 3 is considered to be the best practice, and that's what we did. We gave 3 written warnings. Giving appropriate notice. And that will be, again, on the Fair Work website, depends on the award, depends on the role that they're doing. So you need to check the notice period and make sure that you adhere to that. You don't need to give notice for people who are casual workers, so you can just say that's your last day today. And you don't need to give notice periods for people that have behaved in a way that's very serious, abuse and stealing and that sort of stuff. In the case of the support worker that I had to fire, he didn't want to continue working for his notice period, but I paid him for that notice period, which was what I needed to do according to the award and according to the rules. But he just didn't want to stay, and that was fine by me. Okay, so again, this is a table from the Fair Work Australia website. Check it, because it does depend on a number of different things. The age of the employee. If they're 45 years and older, and they've been working for more than 2 years, then you have to give them more notice. If they've been less than a year, then you only have to give them 1 week. That sort of stuff. So you need to check. And you can, like I said, you can pay the person out and they can stop working that day, or they can work out their notice period. If the employee doesn't give you any notice and they just say to you one day, I'm going, and they don't give you any notice and they don't turn up anymore, then in that circumstance you may be entitled to keep some of the money, but you need to check with Fair Work Australia, again, because it depends on the individual circumstances. But just know that you need to know that. So in our circumstances, firing Peter, that's not his real name. Peter, like I said, wasn't turning up on time all the time, was taking a lot of leave, was watching TV and not supervising my son well enough. So I talked with him just one-on-one about the problem immediately. He was saying that he was tired and that it wasn't a morning person and would prefer to work an afternoon shift. So we did that. We changed his shift to an afternoon, and that worked for a little while, but he just fell back into that habit of turning up late or not at all, taking time off, too much time off. And again, the watching TV thing started up again. So I gave him a written warning. I have a microboard. My son's microboard is called Isaac's Band of Brothers and Sisters Incorporated. I got their help to draft up a warning letter, and we used the template from Fair Work and added a few pieces, and the two of the members of the microboard are very experienced HR managers, so it was great having them to help me to write the letter. And I handed it to him, and I said, right now I'm giving you an official warning. And that happened 2 more times. And so then it continued. So I got the microboard in and we planned how we would have the conversation. And we got all the facts again, printed off all the reports, kept to the facts. We wrote a script out on how to tell him that he was no longer employed by us. We described that what our expectations were, how he hadn't been meeting those expectations, and we gave him a copy of what we'd described to him in written form, and he chose not to come back to work, and we paid him out. I didn't have to have that conversation. It's not something that I'm very good at, so it was a relief not to have to speak to him. I really liked him. Isaac really liked him, and I wanted to hang on to him. I wanted to. I felt that he had potential, but he kept disappointing me, and in the end, I had to let him go. And that was really sad and hard for me. So it was really good to have the microboard members come in. I was there, I was present, but I didn't have to say anything. They ran the meeting for me, and they fired him for me. And he was upset, but it wasn't a surprise. He was upset, but it wasn't a surprise at least. And then 6 months later, I got a phone call from him. And he said, I have no hard feelings. I saw it coming. I was in a bad place. I'm really sorry. I miss Isaac. I understand why you did what you did. Could I still be friends with Isaac? Which I thought was really nice. And it just showed that, I felt that it showed that the firing process had worked quite professionally and really well. And he learnt from it, and Isaac still has a friend, which was really quite nice, I thought. So again, I didn't have any experience in self-managing funding. I had no experience in being the boss of staff. I had no understanding of workplace relations law, nothing. And that was 3 years ago, and I've been on this big, long journey of learning. I was scared. You don't need to know everything before you start, but you can learn along the way, and there's lots of help out there, lots of information, and so being brave and just having a go, because the benefits of having your own staff and being in control of them and not having them go off with other families that do things different and getting all confused, it's been so worth it. We have Microboards Australia offers a mentoring program on how to recruit and manage your own staff. Families are wanting, and people with disability are wanting great staff who do stay longer, and you get the great outcomes. And these are the things that we support and coach, mentor families, and anyone who has a circle or a microboard, we can support them too, to get to that point. So how to plan, how to recruit, how to hire, how to induct, how to train, how to manage, and how to terminate employment, if needs be, is a part of all of what we do. So a summary around ending employment. So you can end employment if you've got someone doing some serious misconduct like fraud and stealing and that sort of stuff, or that they're just not meeting your expectations in terms of their job description, or if you've got an organisational change, or in your case, if you're just a single mum or whatever, just a mum or a dad or a family that's employed staff, and you haven't got your NDIS fundings cut or whatever, then that's also a fair enough reason. You can't just sack people without really thoroughly thinking it through and meeting your obligations, because you don't want to end up in court. Gather your evidence, give warnings, make sure you give appropriate notice, pay out your worker according to the award rules. So if you have a look in the award, you can see what they need to be paid. They need to be paid. If you've got them as permanent staff, they'll need to have their leave paid out and all of that sort of stuff. So there's guidelines around that as well. And don't let fear stop you. Get a mentor and learn along the way. So be brave, gather your tribe, and get a great life.